my channel. Today we are doing a much requested video which is how to edit a novel. Now this is something that it can be quite time consuming. Well, we know it's going to be quite time consuming. I am not going to lie to you. It's going to be shite. It's going to take forever and you're going to feel like you're going round and round and round and round and round on it and never getting anywhere. Believe me, you are getting somewhere and it is all for the good of your novel. Okay? Now I'm going to split this into two videos because to me there's different parts of editing. So to me it makes logical sense to split it into two videos. The first part, which is today's part, we're going to be looking at your hardcore editing, your story structure editing. Okay? Now, editing a novel can seem like a pretty daunting task, as I just said, but it doesn't have to be. So say you've done the hard work, okay? You've written a novel and you need to give yourself a pat on the back for that one because that is the hardest part without a shadow of a doubt. And yeah, editing isn't fun, but it's a necessary evil. So we're going to have to give it a go, okay? But don't worry, Auntie Wills is going to help you through this. I'm going to guide you through how to edit your novel and I'm going to give you tips and tricks that I've found over the years from practice, hard work and fuck-ups. You're welcome. So, you've got your novel and it's wonderful. It is the most amazing thing you have ever seen in your life before, probably next to creating your child. Technically, you have given birth to this. You've spent months nurturing it and you've brought it out into the world, shouting and screaming and sweating and yelling. It's been painful, it's been long, but it's worth it. Because now you're holding your little creation in your hands, and again, give yourself a round of applause for that because that is brilliant. You didn't give up. You finished something. That is amazing, and that is the place where most authors or writers tend to come unstuck. They tend to get to the point where they never actually manage to finish something, and you have. So, yay! But here's where your first problem lies. So many writers are under the illusion, or should I say delusion, because that's more accurate, that their writing is perfect. Bullshit. We've been here before. Bullshit. Nothing is ever perfect first time round. Ego is the writer's worst enemy. No matter what your English teacher said, no matter how much your friends and family have praised your work, it still needs editing and it still needs work. So get the idea out of your head that you can write something magical and wonderful and perfect first time round and not have a shred of work to do. You done? Good. You get rid of that illusion. Get out your head. Get over it. Cool? Good. Now, I'm not going to lie. Editing, as I said, editing is a lengthy task. One that can seem to go on forever. It's read through after read through with no end in sight. I get it. I've been there. And also, the most important thing you can do for your novel, next to writing the damn thing, is the editing process. If you don't do your editing, you are doing your novel a massive disservice. So rid yourself of the illusion that writing is the important part and that you don't need to learn to edit or make any attempt at sorting out the mess that is your first draft. That's bullshit. I've heard so many writers saying that they don't care about spelling or grammar and punctuation because that's what editors are for, right? No. Just no. Yeah. Okay, so yeah. Editors are there to make sure that your novel is in the best shape that it can be. But they aren't there to fix every teeny tiny little problem for you. That is not their job. That is yours. Whether you are going the self-publishing route or trying to get published traditionally through a publisher, you will need to edit your work. If you're self-publishing, then everything to do with your novel, start to finish, including editing, is something that you have to do. You have to be responsible for it and you have to foot the bill for. So you are going to have to be prepared for that. Most editors charge per word or per page and will charge more for the amount of work they have to do. It's just common sense, right? So what else is common sense is to not pay for something that you can do yourself. Now, I'm not saying you do not need a professional editor. You know, I will always recommend that. But doing as much of the work yourself will make it more affordable and will give you more control over it. Most editors will not fix story structure or plot holes for you. They might notice them and give you some suggestions on how to fix them, but the work is on you. And the more you have to keep going back and forth with your editor, the more it will cost you. Many people think that traditional publishing means all they need to do is pitch an idea, post off a rough draft, and their story will wow the publishers so much that they will snap it up without a second thought, doing all of the work for them. Not so. A publisher is there to make money, and if they're handed a rough draft that has so many plot holes, bad pacing, weak story structure, characters and dialogue, and rubbish, they are going to toss it straight in the reject pile no matter how good your idea is. Sorry, be brutal honest, but that's the truth. It will be too much work for them, and they'll see it as you not even giving a shit about your work. And at the end of the day, can you expect them to care about your work if you don't? So before you even attempt to edit your novel, the first thing you can do, the very best thing you can do for your work, is to take a break. Yeah, I know. It sounds stupid, but it's true. I know it sounds counterproductive, but believe me, it's not. You've just finished writing this book. You are so close to it in your mind, everything. You need to take a break. What you need to do is put it in a drawer and just step back and to leave it alone. Now, my personal preference and what I do myself is to leave it for at least a year. Yep, a year between finishing my novel and starting to edit it. Now, I know that most of you are never going to wait that amount of time. I get it, but at least 3 months is always recommended. In that time, you need to try and wipe the whole story from your mind as much as you possibly can. Write something different. Plot your next novel. Catch up on your to-be-read pile. Do whatever it takes to cleanse your mind. The aim of this is to come to your novel with fresh eyes. Next, you're going to read your story. And to read your story, I recommend for this time you put it onto like a tablet or phone or something where you're not actively in a Word document or whatever program you used to write your story. I use an app called Calibra, and that converts Word files into like PDF and Mobi and things like that. Mobi is a file type used by Amazon for Kindle. And once you have it converted, it is so easy to get it onto your Kindle. All you have to do is go into settings on your Kindle, find your Kindle email address and email it to yourself. Simple as that, and it will just turn up in your pile. Lovely. You want to set aside some time dedicated to this read through. Now ideally you want it to be a quick thing, lasting no more than say 3 days. You need to re-immerse yourself in your story so the details and the finer points are fresh in your mind. During this read through, I want you to think like a reader. This is not the time to edit. Yes, I know again that sounds like it's going completely against everything that we just said, because this is our editing process, right? True, it is, but by distracting yourself from the writer aspect of the story, you're going to see it as a reader would, and that is the most important thing. As you read through, it is fine to make a few notes on things that you notice that stand out about the book, or that anything that jars, or that you feel like it doesn't quite fit. We are not actively editing a novel right now. You're checking the story for plot holes and to make sure that the story actually makes sense. Next, we're going to be looking at pacing. Now, I've done a video on pacing before, so if you're not sure what I mean by that, then maybe go back and have a little watch of it and see what we do. Right, I want you to be honest with yourself. I need you to be honest with yourself and ask yourself the following questions. Did you find that you had the urge to skip over any parts of your story? Did you find that at any point you were bored? Did the story lag? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then that is the first things that you need to fix. If you got bored and you already knew the story, I can guarantee that your readers will have been bored probably way before you were. So once you've done your first read through, this is the time to get to work on polishing that baby. My advice is to always start by making a copy of your first draft. Never start editing on the original document, which I know you've backed up numerous times like good little writers, haven't you? We're going to follow a pretty simple formula for this, okay? Plot, pacing, murdering your darlings, dialogue, style, and editing. First, plot. Does the story make sense? Does it have a clear goal and a clear purpose? This is so important when writing and editing your story. If you don't know exactly how your story is supposed to go, maybe because you wrote it without a plot or without any guidelines, then you'll need to pay serious attention to the details of this story, making sure that the whole thing makes sense and that it follows a story structure formula and has no major plot holes. Next is pacing. You're going to go through it scene by scene as honestly as possible, keeping in mind one thing: do I need this? Anywhere that you notice the story is starting to lag or that the scene went on for a little bit too long, ask yourself the following: does it move the story along? Does it have a purpose? Would losing it affect the story? If the answer is no, then it can likely go. If the answer is yes, then you're going to need look a little bit more in depth at this. Why is it lagging? What did you notice about it? Did the scene just drag on, or was there no real action or interesting or funny dialogue to break it up? Was it a massive info dump? All of these are fixed quite easily with some improvements to dialogue. I've done a couple of videos about dialogue and pacing that might be worth watching if you haven't done so already. So I'd go, and maybe if you have, maybe you just want to go back and refresh your memory. That's cool. I'll meet you back here. You done? Good. A story that is full of action and drama the entire time will burn out your reader, making it hard to read. This is something that puts off many readers, myself included. If your story seems to be one long drama-filled thing, scene after another, with no letdowns, no relaxing periods, and no time to actually breathe, I find that the story is just too much, too full on, and I will give up on it. Remember, this is just your first round of editing, so it doesn't have to be perfect. This is the time to add things and to take them away. There is no limit to the amount of fiddling that you are allowed to do. Next we are at Murder Your Darlings. Now this is something my writing tutor used to parrot to us almost every single lesson. Murder your darlings. This means that no matter how much you love that character, they aren't bringing anything to the plot, they aren't integral to the story, they are just there because they are the protagonist's best friend, but do absolutely nothing, then you don't need them. The readers either won't care about them, or they'll feel cheated that they have no real resolution, no real story, and no motivation. They are a nothing, and we do not need nothings. The same goes for scenes. You might have written the most amazing scene in their history of amazing scenes, but it doesn't really fit into the plot. It doesn't add anything to it, and it doesn't move the story along at all. It's just filler, and we do not need filler. Now, I'm not saying that you need to highlight and ruthlessly delete that while crying into your coffee cup, but I would suggest putting it aside for use in something else, or maybe as a deleted scene if you want to do that sort of thing. I've had it so many times, and it's always hard, but remember that we are doing this for the good of our novel. We're not doing it to show off. We must be ruthless. Next up is dialogue. Now, I always suggest reading as much of your work as you can aloud, but if you don't want to read the whole thing, because it can be time consuming or boring and quite embarrassing, let's be honest, we're hardly ever alone in our houses, and if we're reading stuff out loud, we're going to look a bit weird, but necessary evil. So the thing is, if you don't want to do the whole thing, then at least read your dialogue. You need to know if it's working for your story or not. I'm not going to go into massive details here because I've recently uploaded videos on how to get the best out of your dialogue and how to avoid mistakes, but I will just highlight a couple of areas to watch out for. Repetitive dialogue. This is where the characters seem to say the same things over and over again in the same style every time they're into a conversation. It's boring. That rolls into chit chat and catch up. Okay, everyone has a little chit chat and conversation, a little catch up, but not every time we see each other. You don't need endless reams of "Hi, how are you? How's work? What did you do? How did you get on? How are the kids?" This is boring and it is not needed. Using dialogue as a way to impart information. This needs to be done sparingly and in the right place at the right time. Info dumps, we're not having them. Character voices that blend. Now, characters that all sound the same and all sound identical to your author's voice are not good characters. The reader is going to get confused, they're going to get bored of reading it because there's no change, there's no pace, there's no difference. They're boring. Static characters during dialogue. Now, I'm not saying that you need your characters to be constantly moving around, bumping into each other, pacing, stomping, throwing things around, but they shouldn't be cardboard cutouts either. Natural is key. Next up is style. Now this includes the genre of the story, the tone of the story, your writer's voice, your point of view and tenses. You need to pay close attention to the tense changes when you're writing a novel because it is so easy to slip from past tense to present or from third person into first. If in doubt, read it aloud. Tone is another important one. I believe you should write to fit your style, not try to shoehorn your style into a story that isn't made for it. Okay? If you have an idea for a tragedy, you can't write it in a comedic style. If you have very modern language, you cannot force that into a historical. If you have a serious tone, then don't write a comedy. It's just common sense. Trying to force yourself out of your comfort zone into something that you aren't comfortable with will sound forced and jarring. If you have a naturally funny tone and a way with words, then try a comedy, a romance, a that's life type of story. If you've got a natural fast pace, then maybe stick to short stories, or you can risk your novel feeling very rushed. If you have naturally sort of flowery style of writing, then maybe a historical or women's literature would be more your style. I'd suggest reading as many books of different genres that you can and see what fits your style better. Then form your story accordingly. And finally, ending. Your story ending must be satisfying for your reader. It must conform with the purpose of the story and be a natural conclusion rather than a jarring end that comes out of nowhere. Any problems that were stated at the beginning of the story must be resolved by the end. Now, there's a little bend to this rule. Obviously, there's bend with every rule. You know what I'm like. I like to bend every single rule I possibly can. But within reason. It's bending, not just breaking every single rule as you go. Here's the bend. If your beginning goal wasn't beneficial to your protagonist, for example, if they wanted to get revenge on someone or to win back an old lover, but during the story they change as a person, then the goal might not suit them now. Revenge might be the last thing on their minds. They might have met somebody else so they never want the ex back again. Above all, your story ending must make sense. It must fit the character's motivation and their development, and it must be satisfying. Obviously, during this structural editing, it's worth running your manuscript through a spelling and grammar checker to make sure that any glaringly obvious faults are rectified. Once you've done this with your book, it's ready to be shared with a select few people, usually beta readers or those that you can trust to be brutally honest. They might find plot holes that you missed, or have questions about characters and their motivation, or something that happened off stage that you know about but haven't explained well enough for your readers to follow and understand. Never underestimate the usefulness of a beta reader. That's all we have time for today, but please pop back next week when we'll be looking at how to fine tune and copy edit your novel. Until next time. blessed be, and happy writing.